It's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker of the day, Emmanuel Fricain from Université de Lille, who will continue his mini course on truncated Toeplitz operators. Please, Emmanuel.
Thank you very much. So thank you to everybody for coming back for this second lecture. So maybe I will start with some reminders of yesterday, just so that you will have the notation in mind. So I start with an inner function theta, so which means a function in analytic and bounded on the unit disk and whose radial limits of modulus 1 almost everywhere on T. And I denote by k theta the model space associated, which means the orthogonal complement of theta H2 in H2, or you can also view it as the intersection of H2 intersect with theta Z bar H2 bar. Here the bar, of course, means conjugate. And now for phi in L2, we consider the truncated Toeplitz operator, TTO, A phi, which is a densely defined operator acting on, for instance, on k theta intersect with H infinity, which is a dense set in k theta, with the following formula. So you take a function f in k theta intersect with H infinity, you multiply by phi, and then you project on k theta. So maybe I can recall it that basic p theta is the orthogonal projection from L2 onto k theta. Right, so this is what is called the truncated Toeplitz operator, and in fact I will denote also by tau theta the set of all bounded truncated Toeplitz operator on k theta. And so the aim of this talk, of this lecture today is to, in fact, to answer the following general question: how to recognize TTO between the all bounded operator on k theta. So if we think about the analog question for Toeplitz operator, I recall you the following well-known result of Brown and Almost, who showed that if you start with a bounded operator T on H2, on the RD space H2, then T is a Toeplitz operator if and only if it satisfies this following algebraic equation. So if and only if T is equal to S, T, S star, where S is the shift operator, so the multiplication by Z, or the Toeplitz operator with symbol Z. So we can ask, of course, if we have such a result for TTO, and in fact we have, but the situation is a little bit more complicated. And this is the result of Saracen in his famous 2007 paper, where he proved that if you have a bounded operator A on k theta, then A would be a TTO, or truncated Toeplitz operator on k theta, if and only if you have this relation. So here, maybe I can recall that S theta is what we called the model operator, so the truncated Toeplitz operator with symbol Z. So in fact, if you look at this formula and this formula, you see that here the shift S is replaced by S theta, so which is quite natural. But maybe the big difference here is that you have there is in fact two rank 1 operator which are involved. So here, maybe I could also recall the notation. So for X and Y in k theta, I denote by X tens product with Y the operator on k theta, which acts like this. It's F scalar product with Y times X. So it's a rank 1 operator with range space equal to Cx. And so here, the operator A would be a truncated Toeplitz operator if and only if A is equal to S theta star plus these two rank 1 operator where phi and psi are in k theta, and k0 theta is in fact the reproducing kernels of k theta at point 0. So in other words, it is this function of k theta at 0. And in that case, in fact, you can take for the symbol of A the sum of phi plus psi bar. Okay, I will not prove this theorem, which is a bit technical, not difficult, but a bit technical. And I will maybe deduce one corollary of this characterization, saying that in fact the set of bonded truncated Toeplitz operator is in fact closed in the weak operator topology. So let's see how it works. So I start with a net A alpha in the set of bonded truncated Toeplitz operator, which converges weakly to a bonded operator A. And I would like to prove that A is also a truncated Toeplitz operator. So first thing is I use a corollary of last lecture, which says that since A alpha is a truncated Toeplitz operator, I can take as a symbol the sum of phi alpha plus psi alpha bar, where phi alpha and psi alpha bar are in k theta, and I can choose phi alpha such that it vanishes at 0. In fact, I explained you yesterday that in fact this representation of the symbol of A alpha is unique. If you ask that this particular form of the symbol. And now I apply theorem 1, which says that A alpha, since it's a truncated Toeplitz operator, satisfy that relation. So in particular, if I apply this relation to k0 theta, so the reproducing kernel of k theta at 0, then you get this, because in fact, when you apply this operator to k0 theta, you get the scalar product of k0 theta against psi alpha times k0 theta. And since this is a reproducing kernel of k theta at 0, it gives this term is phi 0, psi alpha 0 bar, sorry, k0 theta, and since psi alpha 0 is 0, it gives you 0. So these terms vanish when you apply against k0 theta, and then you get only that terms. And now, using the fact that A alpha converges weakly to some operator A, you get from this relation that psi alpha, in fact, will converge weakly to some function phi in k theta. And of course, it means that psi alpha tens product with k0 theta will converge in the weak operator topology. And so using 1, you get also that this net will also converge in the weak operator topology. And so in other words, it will mean that psi alpha will converge weakly to some psi in k theta. So using all of this, and if you report to 1, in fact, you passing to the limit, you get that A satisfies this relation. And then using theorem 1, it means that A is a truncated Toeplitz operator with that symbol, psi plus phi plus psi alpha bar. So you get that this set is weakly closed. So in fact, when k theta is finite dimensional, which corresponds to the fact that theta is a finite Blaschke product, you can get more specific result using matrix representation. And so this approach was beautifully developed in this paper by Sima, Ross, and Vaughan, where they explore, in fact, some different kind of matrix representation. For instance, with Clark bases or Malquish bases, so some different bases for k theta, and they get some characterization of when an operator is a TTO in terms of the representation of this matrix representation. Okay. So now I will discuss a bit the relation between TTO and another famous class of operator, the so-called complex symmetric operators. So Bill Ross last week talked about this class of operator, but I will remind some facts. In fact, I will need. And so the first is what is called a conjugation. So a conjugation on an inverse space H is a map, a self-map C from H into itself that is conjugate linear, so which means that you have this relation. It's involutive and it's isometric. So be careful when you take the scalar product between Cx and Cy. Usually when you have an isometric linear operator, it's the scalar product of x with y. But here, since it is conjugate linear, you have to reverse the scalar, the order of the vector here. Okay, and so we will say that the bounded operator T on H is C-symmetric if it satisfies this relation. So T is equal to C, T star C. And the bounded operator T is complex symmetric if T is C-symmetric for some conjugation C on H. And so, in fact, this class of operator was developed in these two papers of Garcia and Putina in 2006 and 2007 in Transaction of the AMS. And then there was a lot of activity in that direction. And in fact, there are a lot of, there are a lot of examples of operators which are complex symmetrics. It's a very, very large class of operator. So for instance, complex symmetric matrices, so which means that the matrix A coincides with this complex transpose are complex symmetric operator. Hankel and Toeplitz matrices are also complex symmetric operators. Normal operators are also complex symmetrics. And as Bill explained us last week, the Volterra operator is also a complex symmetric operator. But Toeplitz operator on H2 are in general not complex symmetric. So it's quite easy to see because when you have a complex symmetric operator, of course, since you have this relation, in particular, it will imply, because C is a conjugation, it will imply that in particular, the kernel of T and the kernel of T star should have the same dimension. And so, for instance, if you look at the most simpler operator, Toeplitz operator, so the shift operator, so the Toeplitz operator with symbol Z, of course, it's easy and well known that the dimension of the kernel is 0, whereas the dimension of the kernel of its adjoint is 1. And so S cannot be complex symmetric. But however, we will see that all truncated Toeplitz operator will be complex symmetric. And this is another big difference between TTO and Toeplitz operator. So to see that in fact, what is also maybe surprising is that it will be for the same conjugation. I mean, if you fix your model space. So the conjugation that you will need on k theta is the following. So for f in k theta, you define c theta f as theta z bar f bar. So let's observe that c theta is in fact a self-map on k theta. Indeed, if you start with a function f in k theta and write k theta using that definition, so it means that it's the intersection of h2 intersect with theta z bar h2. Then you write your function f as theta z bar g bar for some g in h2. And so if you apply c theta to f, by definition, it will be theta z bar times f bar. And so I replace f bar by theta bar z g. And since, so here it's on t, in fact. So on t, I recall you that theta and z, of course, are of modulus 1 almost everywhere, because theta is an inner function. And so on t, this coincides with g. And so you get that, in fact, this function c theta f is equal to g with g in h2. So in particular, this function will be in h2. And by definition, it's in theta z bar h2 bar because f is in h2. And so it's in k theta. So c theta is, in fact, a self-map on k theta. And now it's very easy to see that it's a conjugate linear, involutive, and isometric. And so it's a conjugation on k theta. And what Sarason observed is that, in fact, all truncated tuplets, bonded truncated tuplets operator on k theta are c theta symmetric. So meaning that, in fact, if you start with a truncated tuplets operator A phi, bonded truncated tuplets operator A phi, then you have this relation that A phi is equal to c theta, A phi star c theta. So the proof is not very difficult. So I will show you. So you start with two functions f and g in k theta intersect with h infinity, which is contained in the domain of your operator. And I compute this scalar product. So c theta, a phi star, c theta f against g. So first, I use the fact that c theta is a conjugation. So it's coincide with the scalar product of c theta g with a phi star c theta f. Now I use the fact here that the conjugate of a phi, as we have seen yesterday, is equal to a phi bar. And I put the definition of a phi bar. This is equal to p theta time applied to phi bar c theta f. Now, since c theta g is in k theta, I can remove here the orthogonal projection on k theta, and I get the scalar product of c theta g with phi bar c theta g. Now I use the definition of c theta, and so you get this. Then using one more time that theta is of modulus 1 and z also on t, you can remove this theta and this z bar, and you get that this coincides with the scalar product in L2 of g bar with phi bar f bar. So I reverse the scalar product to see that it's the scalar product of phi f against g. I apply here the projection on k theta because g is in k theta. And you recognize here the truncated Toeplitz operator A phi applied to G. And so you get the result. So all bounded truncated Toeplitz operator are C theta symmetric. So in particular, so on K theta, I mean, are C theta symmetric. And in fact, this allows us to give another characterization of TTO, where compared to the first characterization we have seen here, in fact, you will reverse here these two terms. So you will get S theta star first and then S theta here. And what happens if you do this, in fact, you will get this different. So in the first result, this is with a reproducing kernel of theta at 0. And here what appears is this function in K theta, C theta star. So this is just a consequence of the first characterization and an application of the conjugation. So, okay. So this is an analog of the first characterization of bounded truncated Toeplitz operator. So now, so we have seen that TTO are complex symmetric operator. In fact, in some sense, there are some results which can make think us that they can serve as a model for all complex symmetric operator. So in fact, what was observed is that there is a long list of complex symmetric operator which are unitarily equivalent to a TTO. So the first result in that direction was the result of Savason, in fact, who observed that the Volterra operator on L2 of 0,1 is unitarily equivalent to a TTO on K theta with this particular function theta. So the singular inner function with a singular measure equals to the Dirac measure at point 1. So another result, more recent, is a result of Sima, Garcia, Ross, and Vaughan, who observes that all normal operators are also unitarily equivalent to a TTO. And I would like also to cite a result of Strauss, Timotin, and Zarabi, who observe that a remarkable array of inflation of TTO are also unitarily equivalent to TTO. So all these results, and in fact other results in that direction, yield to the following question, natural question: is every complex symmetric operator unitarily equivalent to a TTO? So if this question is yes, okay, we are happy. And if not, of course, we can ask which ones are. And so to my knowledge, I think these two questions are, for the moment, open, and it's a very interesting question, I think. Okay, so now I would like to move to another characterization of TTO, which says the following. So if you have a bounded operator A on K theta, and this result was also observed by Savason. So if you have a bounded operator A on K theta, then A will be a truncated Toeplitz operator if and only if whenever you have a function f and SF in K theta. Of course, this second condition is not automatic, right? Because in general, the K theta is invariant with respect to the adjoint of the shift, but not invariant with respect to S. So, but if you assume these two conditions on the function f, so you impose that it's in function f and multiplication by z is also in K theta, then the action of A on F against F should be equal to the action of A on SF against SF. So I will just prove one implication, and in fact, maybe the more important one, because this is what this implication I will use after. So I assume that A satisfies this condition, and I will try to prove that A is indeed a truncated Toeplitz operator by showing that A satisfies corollary 4. And so what corollary 4 says, so this is this corollary, in fact. So it says that if you look at this operator, I call it B, so A minus S star theta A S theta, then you have to find two functions, phi and psi in K theta, such that B is equal to this rank 2 operator. So if you can, or at least this sum of two rank 1 operator. So if you can prove this, then the corollary 4 will imply that A is indeed a truncated Toeplitz operator with symbol, in fact, phi plus psi bar. So let's try to prove this. So the first things to check, and this I will not give details, but it's not too difficult, is to see that when F is in H2, then F and SF are in K theta if and only if F is orthogonal to this function, and of course to all multiple of this function. So in fact, the set of function F in K theta which satisfies this condition coincide exactly with the orthogonal complement of C star theta in K theta. Okay, so this is just a simple computation, so I will skip this equivalence and just use it. So in particular, it says that for every F orthogonal to this function, then S theta applied to F, it's by definition equal to the orthogonal projection on K theta of CF, because C theta is a Toeplitz operator with symbol Z. And since when F is orthogonal to S theta, to S star theta, then SF is in K theta, you can remove here the orthogonal projection and it's only SF. And so now using 2 is our hypothesis, you get that if you look at the scalar product of BF with F, so here I just replace the definition of B, which is A minus S star theta A S theta. Here I use, okay, I put the I-joint here. And here I just use what I proved is that S theta F is equal to SF when F is in this orthogonal complement. And using 2, this is equal to 0, right? So it says that for any F orthogonal to S theta, to S star theta, BFF is equal to 0. And of course, by polarization identity, you get that BF against G is equal to 0 for any F and G here. And so now observe that the orthogonal projection in K theta with range this orthogonal complement is exactly equal to identity minus C S star theta tensor product with S star theta, where C is just the inverse of the square of this of the norm of this vector. because in fact this represents exactly the orthogonal projection on S star theta, and so identity minus this orthogonal projection is the orthogonal projection onto this orthogonal complement. And so using this relation, you can write this, in fact, property exactly like this. So if you apply B on this orthogonal projection and you project on this orthogonal, with this orthogonal projection, you get the zero operator. And now developed this relation, you can easily write B as phi times product with S star theta plus S star theta times product with psi, with this particular function phi and psi, which are in k theta. And you get what you want. You get that B is of the following, of the required form, and then using a theorem or corollary 4, you get that A is a truncated Toeplitz operator. Okay, so this is another characterization. Of course, all these characterization, in fact, are interesting because, as we have seen, there are no unicity of the symbol, and it could be, given an operator, it could be difficult to see if it's truncated Toeplitz operator. There are no real, I mean, it could be difficult, and so having different characterization could be useful to check if a given bounded operator on k theta, to check if it's TTO or not. And this is quite an easy, I mean, a concrete characterization you have to check. Okay, so now I will skip to another way of, another point of view on TTO. Sorry, which is related to Carlson measure for k theta. So I will make some reminders on Carlson measures for k theta, and see after given a Carlson measure for k theta, we will see that we can associate a natural TTO on k theta. So what I call a Carlson measure for k theta. So you start with a finite Borel measure mu on T. And we will say that mu is a Carlson measure for k theta if you have these embeddings. So k theta can be embedded into L2 of total variation of mu. And by closed graph theorem, it's not difficult to see that then there is a constant C such that for every f in k theta, you have this relation. So you can control the norm, the L2 norm of f by the H2 norm of f, or the L2 norm of f with respect to the Lebesgue measure on T. So here I cheat a bit because okay, when you have a function in k theta, it's a function in H2. So but in general, what the only thing you can say is that as for function in H2, you have a radial limit almost everywhere, but with respect to the Lebesgue measure. And of course, it's not clear that the function f will be defined almost everywhere with respect to mu. So here, in fact, normally you have to ask that you have these embeddings for function f in k theta intersect with the space of continuous function up to the boundary or on the closed disk and then use a result of Alexandrov saying that this set is dense in k theta. But I don't want to go into these details. I mean, please forget this, just these technical details, and we can make things smooth and clear if we want. Okay, so this is the concept of Carlson measure for model space, and I will denote by C2 theta the class of such a measure. We will see in the third lecture why I put here a 2, but for the moment, don't worry about that. Okay, so C2 theta will denote the class of all Carlson measure for k theta. And in fact, of course, it's an abstract definition and notion. And if we think, for instance, to the Carlson theorem, the analog for H2, we can ask if we could have a geometric characterization of such a measure. And in fact, in general, the problem is opened, I mean, to get a complete characterization, but still there are some sufficient condition due to Trail and Volberg, which are in the same spirit as a famous Carlson theorem for embeddings of the RD space H2. So I will now just explain a little bit this. So I will denote for an epsilon in between 0 and 1 this sub-level set omega theta epsilon. So it's the set of Z in D, such that the inner function theta Z is of modulus less or equal to epsilon. So this is a subset of T, which can touch the boundary. I mean, the closure of this subset can touch the boundary, and in general, it touches the boundary. And I recall the concept of Carlson window. So for an arc I in T, so maybe I will make a picture, it will be more clear maybe. So if you have the cycle here, if you take an arc here, so let's imagine that 0 is here. So the Carlson windows associated to this arc is in fact this set, where here you take something of length also I. Here I is the normalized Lebesgue measure of the arc. And so SI will be this subset of the closed unit disk, and it is denoted by SI. Okay, so I remind you that the Carlson theorem says that the RD space H2 is embedded into L2 of mu if and only if there is a constant C such that the measure mu of SI is controlled by this constant C times the length of the arc. And Trail and Volberg proved that there is a similar result, but the difference is that you have to test this Carlson geometric condition, not on every arc I of T, but only for those such that the Carlson windows intersect some level set. So in general, the set of Carlson measure is larger for k theta is larger than the usual one for H2, and the reason, in fact, is maybe because k theta function in case theta are in general more regularity on the united cycle. They behave more nicer than an arbitrary function in H2. So the converse is in general not true, but it is true if theta is what is called a one component inner function, meaning that in fact for some epsilon between 0 and 1, this sub-level set is connected. So this characterization of Trail, this result of Trail-Volberg is the geometric condition is necessary and sufficient when theta is one component. Okay, now what is the relation between TTO? So if you have a Carlson measure mu for k theta, and if you have two functions f and g in k theta, then if you look at this integral, so the integral of the modulus of fg against d mu, then using Cauchy-Schwarz inequality, of course, you can bound this by the L2 norm of f and mu, of f and g. There is a modulus here which is missing, sorry. And since mu is a Carlson measure, these two integrals can be bounded by the H2 norm of f and g. And so, in fact, it's exactly says that if you look at this sesquilinear functional, which I denote by gamma mu theta, which acts on k theta times k theta by the following formula, then this functional is sesquilinear functional is bounded. And so in particular, it implies that there exists a bounded operator, which I denote by a mu or a mu theta on k theta, such that which represents this bounded sesquilinear functional. So a mu f g on where f and g are in k theta is equal to the integral of f g bar d mu. And what Sarason observed is that, in fact, this operator as mu is a truncated Toeplitz operator. And the proof is very easy if you use the characterization we proved a few minutes ago. So according to our theorem, the only things to prove is that when you have f and sf in k theta, then you have to check this formula. And in fact, this formula is very easy because in that case, a mu applied to sf against sf is using the definition of a mu is exactly equal to the integral of zf against z bar f bar against d mu. And since the modulus of z is equal to 1 on t, it coincides with the integral of f bar against d mu, which is exactly a mu f against f. And you are done. Using our characterizations, then a mu is bounded truncated Toeplitz operator. And in fact, Sarason asked in his paper in 2007 if every bounded truncated Toeplitz operator is of this form. So it means that if you have a bounded truncated Toeplitz operator on k theta, can you find Carlson measure mu on for k theta such that your TTO will be of the form a mu? And in fact, in their beautiful paper in GFA in 2011, Baranov, Bezonov, and Kapustin proved, among other things, that the answer is true. So it means that if you have a bounded operator A on k theta, then A is a truncated Toeplitz operator on K theta if and only if A is of the form A mu for some Carlson measure mu on K theta. So it means that this construction, in fact, of TTO gives you all possible Toeplitz truncated Toeplitz operator. There is a sort of correspondence between TTO and Carlson measure for K theta. Okay. So maybe I speak too quickly because I plan to stop now. But so here are some references on concerning result I discussed today. So the paper of Bessonov, Baranov, and Kapustin, where you can find the last result I mentioned. And we will come back tomorrow on that paper because they proved a lot of interesting results. And I will discuss tomorrow another interesting problem related to bonded symbols, where the problem was solved also in that paper. And here I put again the survey and the book I mentioned yesterday, where you can find some of the results I mentioned. One more time, of course, the paper of Sarason and here the paper of Volberg and Twelve, where they prove the characterization, not the complete characterization, but the necessary condition to get a Carlson measure for K theta. Okay, so maybe we will have more times for question, maybe, I hope. And I will stop now. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for wonderful talk. Let's thank you, Manuel. And questions, comments, suggestions? So there is a question in the chat. In link with Ryan's yesterday talk, is there a Trell-Wolberg theorem for CP?
Very good question. I think, yeah, this theorem, in fact, worked for CP. And I think also when theta is one component, the converse is true, but be careful. Nevertheless, there is a difference between the RD space and model the RD space HP, I mean, and model space K theta P, in the sense that for HP, you know that the Carlson measure for one HP or all HP are the same, in fact. But for K theta P in general, CP theta in fact depends on P. So for one component inner function, I think it does not depend on P, but in general it depends on P. But still, the result of Trell-Wolberg is true for any P. This sufficient condition.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Other questions, comments? Okay, if not, let's thank Emmanuel again.